Okay, let's see who has joined.
Simran joined.
Hi, Simran.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Simran. How are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Aditya, you can go ahead and talk to the students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hi, Afroz, and hi, Simran. Oh, also hi, Srihan.
Hi, sir.
Hi,
Hello.
Afroz.
Hello.
How are you? How are you, Afroz?
Hi, friend.
I am fine.
Hi, friend.
That's good. How about you, Simran? How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm good too.
अफरोज आप एक जगह बैठ जाइए.
Let's wait a little bit more.
Yeah, ma'am. 1 minute.
Okay. Welcome, Shrihan. How are you? Welcome. How are you?
Good, ma'am.
Good. Wonderful. And this is your first time joining the class. So, welcome. And we look forward to having you in the class all the time, Shrihan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm here, hello, ma'am.
क्या कह रहे चाह रहे हैं आप?
How are
Ma'am.
you, Afroz? Yes.
Hi, friend.
Good.
तुम्हें डर नहीं
And
कहते मैम.
very nice. How was your week, Afroz?
Ma'am.
Huh?
तुम्हें डर नहीं कहते मैम.
Hey, guys, ma'am.
I think he want to share something from you, ma'am.
Yes. Tell me.
बोलो अफरोज.
Hey,
क्या
ma'am.
कहना?
शायद
Bolo.
Shout it, hey, ma'am.
वही
Wait, hey.
वही शायद ही मैम.
What is it, ma'am? What is it, say it, ma'am?
वही
Wait,
शायद
shout.
सैड
Why?
Shout.
ही मैम.
Hey, ma'am.
हाँ एक बारी फिर से बोलो अफरोज. थोड़ा सा लाउडली बोलो, ऊंचा बोलो.
वही
Wait.
सैड
Shout.
ही मैम.
Hey, ma'am.
व्हाइट शर्ट.
Ma'am.
कहना चाह रहे हो आप? अफरोज आपके पेरेंट्स जो भी साथ में हैं, अगर अफरोज कुछ कहना चाहता है तो आप बता सकते हैं.
हाँ
मैम
हाँ हाँ बताइए.
कहते मैम.
हाँ जी.
मैम डल नहीं कहते की पूछता है. मैम का फेस डल है कहते.
मुझे भी नहीं समझ में आया.
अंडरस्टैंड. फिर से बोलिए.
मैम डल नहीं कहते. फेस डल है कहते. की करूँ पूछते हैं सब.
ड्रेस कह रहा है वो, ड्रेस पहनने के लिए.
अच्छा अच्छा.
मैम क्या कहना चाह रहा है वो? क्या वो ड्रेस पहनने के लिए कहना चाह रहा है?
फेस फेस डल है कहते मैम.
अच्छा हमें समझ नहीं आ रही. बट चलिए क्लास. हाँ
अच्छा
क्लास.
कोई
वो कह रहा है कि
समझ में
उसका फेस डल लग रहा है. मे बी मैम का जो
Face?
वाइट पहन के हुए
फेस
है.
सैड है कहते मैम.
डल लग रहा है, कुछ डल
वो
लग
क्या
रहा
कह
है।
रहा है कि उसका
डर नहीं मैम,
अच्छा
डल डल है कर को।
कल है।
ओके आई थिंक मुझे थोड़ा सा समझ आ गया। हेलो कोकू, ओके शैल वी स्टार्ट?
या मैम वी कैन स्टार्ट।
ओके आदित्य, गो फॉर इट।
Should I start?
यस,
Okay, so last session, we introduced verbs. I don't know if you guys remember, but that's why we're going to review this lesson today because we didn't fully complete it. So we'll quickly go over what a verb is again. So the first type, a verb is a word, and there's 3 types of verbs. So Simran, can you read this first point?
What is verb? The-
Yeah.
There are words that describe action. Example: run, swim, walk.
Yeah. So a verb is a word that describes action. So what is action? Action is something that a person does. So if we look at this verb run and running is an action. It's something that you do. This is the same for swimming. Swim is a verb because it's an action. Swimming is an action that your body does when you go into water. And everybody walks. Walk, and walking is also an action. So that's why it's a verb, because it's something that you do, which is an action.
सो वर्ब ऐसा वर्ड है जब आप कुछ करते हो, जैसे आप खाते हो, भागते हो, रन करते हो, स्विमिंग करते हो, जंप करते हो, देखते हो। वर्ब एक ऐसी वर्ड है जब आप कोई चीज कर रहे होते हो, एक्शन कर रहे होते हो, उसको डिस्क्राइब करता है। ऑलराइट, वी कैन मूव ऑन।
So the second point is called occurrence. So once again, it's a big word, but occurrence basically means something that happened. So a word that describes something that happened is a verb. For example, show is a verb because it's describing something that's happening. Someone is showing something. I show my pet, or my friend shows her new soccer ball or football. These are all things that happen. So appear, I appear. She appeared into the. These are all something that happen. So that's why it's a verb.
वर्ब एक ऐसा भी वर्ड होता है जब कोई चीज होती है, जैसे अफरोज आया है। आया जो वर्ड है वो भी वर्ब होता है। जब कोई चीज होती है, हो जाती है, या उस चीज को, उस वर्ड को भी हम वर्ब कहते हैं। अकरेंस, अकरेंस मतलब जब कोई चीज होती है। ठीक है, लेट्स मूव टू नंबर 3.
So number 3 is a bit hard as well. So state of being. State of being is basically tells who or what a noun is. So if we remember what a noun is a person, place, or thing. So a verb that tells who or what that person, place, or thing is a verb. For example, if we use was, she was hungry. Was is a verb because it tells what a person is. It tells who or what a noun is. So same thing with were. They were thirsty. This tells us who or what a noun is. It tells us what that group is. They were thirsty or was.
जैसे स्टेट ऑफ बीइंग, वर्ब एक ऐसा वर्ड है जो नाउन के बारे में उसकी स्टेट ऑफ बीइंग, जैसे अगर मैं बोलूं सिमरन वहां थी, जो थी है दैट इज टेलिंग मी समथिंग अबाउट सिमरन. थी भी जो है वो भी वर्ब है. शी वॉज देयर, was is a verb. Students were singing. Were and singing दोनों verb है. But अब हम examples की तरफ चलते हैं ताकि आपको समझ आ जाए कि verb क्या होती है. Examples देख के हमें sentences देख के समझ आएगी verb क्या चीज है, क्या किस तरह का word verb होता है.
So before we see examples, we have to know why verbs are important. Afroz, can you read this first sentence that I'm circling?
जी मैम.
They
They
tell
tell what you are
doing
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 doing.
So the first reason why verbs are important is because they tell what you are doing. So verbs are words that tell what you are doing. So, for example, I am singing. Singing is a verb because it tells what you are doing.
बहुत चाहते हैं. भैया.
Yeah, Afroz, do you want to read this second point too?
They
tell
tell what someone what you is
doing
doing doing
Yeah.
doing.
So the second reason why verbs are important is they tell what someone else is doing. So do you remember the first sentence, I am singing? But if we change it to they are singing, singing is still a verb, but now instead of saying what you are doing, you are saying what they are doing. And that's why verbs are important, because
So
they're telling what someone else is doing.
yes. So ये verbs important क्यों हैं? Simran,
Yeah.
why are verbs important? ये क्यों important होते हैं sentence में? Try करो Simran, answer करना.
I don't think Simran's here.
Simran is not there. Okay.
No.
That's Shrihan, can you try? Word. हाँ. Try करो. हाँ.
He is saying action.
Yeah. Verb action. Exactly. Verbs describe action. And thank you, Shrihan. And verbs important इसलिए होते हैं, they are important because verb जो है आपको, आप जो एक्शन कर रहे हो उसके बारे में बताता है, या बहुत सारे बाकी लोग जो एक्शन कर रहे हैं उसके बारे में बताता है. जैसे अफरोज is dancing. Okay, Afroz is dancing. Dancing is a verb. But we can also say Afroz and Shrihan are dancing. Okay, so verb tells us about action that other people are also doing. Okay, Aditya, we can move forward.
So, they also tell what you are thinking. So thinking is an action, but it's not something you do with your body. It's something you do with your mind. But something you do with your mind is also action. It's just different from something you do with your body.
So yeah.
So,
So,
oh yeah.
Rashi.
हाँ, so जब आप अपने दिमाग के साथ कर रहे होते हो, जैसे सोचते हो, सोचना, सोचो, राइट अफरोज, जैसे आप कुछ सोच रहे हो, वो भी एक्शन होता है. आप देख नहीं सकते, क्योंकि अब जैसे आप चलते हो, वॉक करते हो, रन करते हो, आप देख सकते हो आपकी बॉडी क्या कर रही है. पर जब आपका माइंड कुछ कर रहा होता है, सोचना, ड्रीम करना, ये भी इसको भी वर्ब कहते हैं. ये भी एक्शन होता है जो आपका माइंड कर रहा होता है. ठीक है.
So, like this second one, they also can tell what someone else is thinking. So instead of saying, I am thinking, you can say, he is thinking, or Afroz is thinking, or Shrihan is thinking. And thinking is a verb, but instead of saying, instead of describing what you are thinking, it's now describing what someone else is thinking. So, okay. So remember a few slides ago, we said that there are 3 types of verb: action, occurrence, and state of being. Today, though, we will just be focusing on action verbs. So things that you do with your body and things that you do with your mind. So now I'll be showing some examples of action verbs, and you guys will read each word. So Afroz, can you read this first verb?
Teacher. And
Run. Yeah. So run and running is an action that you do with your body. So that means it's a verb because it's an action. Srihan, do you want to try reading this second verb? This one that I'm circling?
ये क्या लिखा है? तो swim.
Swim. Yeah. So swim is also something you do with your body in the water. It's an action. And since it's an action, that means it has to be a verb. Afroz, can you read this third one that I'm circling? This third verb?
eat.
Eat. Yeah. So eat is also something you do with your body, right? You use your mouth and teeth.
Eating.
Yeah. So eating is an action because you are using parts of your body to do it. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb.
Afroz, I have a question for you. What do you like to eat? Try karo answer karna. What do you like to eat? Afroz, what do you like to eat?
Biryani.
Biryani.
I am eating biryani.
I am biryani.
Okay. Shrihan, I have a question for you. What do you like to eat?
बोलो क्या? उधर मैम को बोलो. चिकन बोल रहा है.
Yeah. Try Shrihan. What do you like to eat?
बोलो जोर से बोलो. चिकन बोलो जोर से. हाँ
Chicken?
हाँ yes ma'am chicken.
Chicken. Okay, wonderful. Okay, let's move forward. Okay.
So Srihan, can you read this fourth verb that I'm circling?
आप बोलो ये क्या लिखा है बोलो तो walk बोलो walk.
Yeah, walk. So walking is something that we all do with our body and our legs. So that means it's an action. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb as well. So these next words that I'm going to show you aren't something that you do with your body, but it's something that you do with your mind. So Afroz, can you read this verb that I'm circling?
Hire.
Every
Day. We. Do. Her. Bargain. Watching. In. Parting.
Yeah. But I just wanted you to read this verb that I'm circling. Afroz, do you see the screen?
Bar. Bar.
This
Walk. Walk.
Oh, yeah. Walk is here, but look on the right side. Do you see this word? Do you see this verb that I'm circling?
thinking.
Thinking.
Think. Yeah. So think and thinking is something that you do with your mind. It's not something that you do with your body parts, like your arms or legs. But just because you don't use your arms or legs doesn't mean that it's not an action. Thinking is still an action because you're using your mind. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb. Srihan, can you try reading the second verb on the right? This one that I'm circling?
क्या लिखा है dream.
Dream. Yeah. So once again, when you dream, you aren't really using your arms or legs or many body parts, but you're using your brain and your mind. And since you're using your brain and mind, that means it's an action. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb as well.
Shihan, what does dream mean? Dream को हिंदी में क्या कहते हैं? Dream क्या होता है, Shihan?
ये उसके लिए एक्सप्रेस करना थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा.
Okay. Dream है सपना. सपना लेते हो ना जब सोते हो? सपना लेना. सपना is a dream and it's a verb, action. क्योंकि आप कुछ कर रहे होते हैं. Okay, let's move to the next verb.
Afroz, can you read this third verb on the right? This one that I'm circling?
Believe. Believe.
Believe. Believe.
Yeah.
Believe. So when you believe, this is something your mind does. It's an action that your mind does. But just because your mind is doing that doesn't mean that it's not an action. It's still an action. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb. And this last one is love. So love is something your mind does also as well. So that means it's an action.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Who is joined?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Who has joined?
Bunch.
लेट क्यों ज्वाइन किया? टाइमिंग 9 o'clock था तो आप इतना लेट क्यों ज्वाइन किया?
मॉर्निंग मैम
टाइम पे ज्वाइन
नेक्स्ट
करना।
टाइम से लेट ज्वाइन नहीं करना है वंश।
ओके,
ओके,
टाइम पे
अब
join
यू
करना।
कंटिन्यू।
And this is Vansh Chaudhary.
मॉर्निंग मैम
Good morning, welcome to the English class. Welcome. And who else? Simran, you're back. Okay, wonderful.
तो चल रही है
Okay, Vansh, good morning. So Vansh, we are doing verbs. अब आप यहाँ से फॉलो करो क्योंकि हमने काफी क्लास we have already covered. हमने क्लास पीछे कवर कर ली है,
Mom.
ठीक है?
मैम
अब आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's move forward, Aditya.
Okay.
Aditya, you continue.
Okay. So, like I was saying, love is something that your mind does, which means it's an action. And since it's an action, it has to be a verb. So, when do we use verbs? Afros, where do we use verbs?
अफरोज, जब हम कोई सेंटेंस बनाते हैं तो Aditya, I think you can show the answer because this is tough.
Okay. So we use verbs in sentences. So let's take this example verb, swim. Where would we use swim? Well, we would use swim in a sentence. So look at this sentence. I swim every day. We use the verb swim to describe an action that you do every day. So verbs are used in sentences to say something about yourself or someone else. So just to repeat, the verb swim is used to tell us what you do every day. So now we know that we use verbs in sentences to say something about yourself or to say something about someone else. So we did this last class, so I think we can just move on to this. So now,
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So now we are going to do an exercise, okay? Afroz and Shrihan and Simran, whoever is in class, we will give you a sentence और आप उसमें try करो बताना उसमें हाँ उसमें वर्ड क्या है, ठीक है? ये अब हमारे क्लास का एक्सरसाइज होएगा. हम आपको सेंटेंस दिखाते हैं और आप उसमें बताओ कि वर्ब कौन सा है. कोई भी ट्राई कर सकता है. Aditya, you can start with the sentence.
So I'll just do the first one with you guys so you guys can see how to answer. So we see this sentence, she dreamed of a big house. So our main goal is to spot the verb in this sentence. We have to find the action in this sentence. So we can look at each word and see if it's an action or not. So we see this first word, she. She is not an action, so it can't be the verb. However, this next word, dreamed and dreaming is an action. It's something that you do with your mind. So dreamed has to be a verb. But let's keep looking. Let's keep looking to see if there's more verbs in the sentence. So of is not a verb because it's not an action. A or a is also not a verb because it's not an action. Big is not an action, so it can't be a verb. And house as well is not an action, so it can't be a verb. So we know that dreamed has to be the verb in this sentence because it's an action. So when we see the answer, he dreamed of a big house, we got it right. Dreamed is a verb in this sentence. So, Afroz, can you read this second sentence?
I yes love
Yeah.
yeah
Lot.
yup
Lot.
lot
Of.
yup
Of.
yup
Good.
good
Day.
today.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, doing the thing that I just did with this sentence, can you tell me in this sentence which word is the verb? Afroz?
So, Afroz, try करो. इस sentence में I ate a lot of food today. इसमें verb कौन सा है? ऐसा सोचो। और अफरोज, अगर आपको अभी नहीं ट्राई करना तो कोई भी ट्राई कर सकता है क्लास में. Anybody can try. And इस sentence में verb कौन सा है?
Long.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Shrihan got it right. It's on his paper. Yeah. So ate. Ate is the verb in the sentence, but let's see why. So let's look at each word. So the first word is I. I is not an action, so it can't be a verb. Let's look at ate. Ate is an action because it's eating. So ate is it just means that you eat, were eating in the past. So ate is an action, we know. This third word, a, is not an action, so it can't be a verb. Of is not an action, so it can't be a verb as well. What about food? Food is as well not an action, so it can't be a verb. And this last word, today, is not an action, so like the other words, can't be a verb. So now we know that ate is the verb in this sentence. If we see the answer, you see I ate, so ate is the verb, a lot of food today. And this verb is used to describe an action that you did today.
देख, ये जो sentence है, I ate a lot of food today. हिंदी में मैंने, today meaning आज, lot बहुत, food खाना, खाया. Ate is खाया. So ate खाना is action. क्योंकि खाते हो जब आप, तो आप कोई action कर रहे होते हैं. That is why ate is a verb. Okay? Action.
Okay, so let's keep practicing. So this will just be open to anybody that wants to answer. Let's read this sentence. I like to play with my friends. So can anybody tell me the verb in this sentence?
Anyone, कोई भी try करो.
Contents. Why? Like.
Like.
Hey.
Like.
Hey.
Verb.
Hub.
Verb.
Hop.
Like. Verb.
Hey.
Play. Yeah. So in this sentence, play is the only word that is in action.
Play.
Yeah, so since play is the only word that is in action, it's the only verb in the sentence. So let's try again with this sentence. Afroz, can you read this sentence?
Verb. Main.
Mom.
Verb. Me.
Cooking.
Cooking. Me.
Food.
Food. Okay.
My mom cooks me food. So now everybody try. What's the verb in this sentence? Look at each word and see whether it's an action or not.
Mom.
कोई भी try करो. My mom cooks me food. इस sentence में कोई भी try करो. Action वाला word कौन सा है? कौन सा word है जो आपको बताता है कि कोई action हो रहा है? Try करो. Which one? Who is trying? Vansh is who is trying? कोई भी try करो.
So
Vansh, you want to try? Shrihan, you try?
it looks like Shrihan got it right on his paper.
Yes.
But does anybody want to say the word, Afros? Do you know the?
Cook.
Yeah, cooks. Cooks is the verb here. But let's see why. So let's look at this first word, my. My is not an action, so it's not a verb. Mom is not an action, it's a noun, remember? Person, place, or thing. So mom is not an action, so it's not a verb. Cooks is actually an action. It's something that you do. It's something that the mom is doing. So therefore, it's an action. So that means cooks has to be a verb because it's an action. What about me? Me is a pronoun. We reviewed that some lessons ago, but it's not an action, so it's not a verb. And finally, food. Food, once again, is not an action, so it can't be a verb. So now we know that cooks is the only verb in this sentence. My mom cooks me food.
Okay. So let me ask the class. कितना समझ आ रहा है अभी आप लोगों को? थोड़ा थोड़ा या ज्यादा? Let me ask Shrihan, are you able to understand? समझ आ रहा है? And Vansh, how about you? Are you able to understand? Vansh? समझ आ रहा है?
पेरेंट्स बच्चों के बिहाफ पे जवाब दे सकते हैं अगर आप अपने बच्चे के साथ घर पे भी वही काम कर रहे हैं और आप देख रहे हैं कि आपका बच्चा रिस्पॉन्स कर रहा है, हमें नहीं कर पा रहा है, अगर वो आपको भी रिस्पॉन्स कर रहा है तो आप हमें बता सकते हैं कि बच्चा कितना कर पा रहा है.
यस मैम, श्रीहन डायरेक्टली ऑनलाइन क्लासेस फॉलो करने में उसे प्रॉब्लम होता है, बट मैं बीच में रहती हूँ तो वो
Okay. What about you, Vansh? आपको समझ आ रहा है थोड़ा सा? थोड़ा थोड़ा?
थोड़ा थोड़ा.
थोड़ा थोड़ा? Afroz? What about you? Afroz, आपको थोड़ा थोड़ा समझ आ रहा है? या
मैम.
थोड़ा आ रहा है? तो आप लोगों को क्या थोड़ी डिफिकल्ट लग रही है?
आप प्लीज थाम.
Okay, okay. Let's
Afroz, आप प्लीज थाम.
okay, okay, good.
Can understand.
Let's move to the next slide, Aditya.
Okay. So let's look at this sentence. The dog ran across the street. So now look at each word very carefully and see whether it's an action or not. Remember, if it's not an action, that means it's not a verb. If it is an action, it has to be a verb. So look at each word and now you tell me, anybody can tell me what the verb is.
Vansh, you want to try?
बताइए.
Try करो.
Run.
Okay. Okay. The dog,
Dog.
dog, ran from
Those spider.
yes. So
Those
कोई भी try करो, इसमें एक्शन वाला वर्ड कौन सा है? कौन सा वर्ड है ऐसा जिसमें एक्शन हो रहा है, जिसमें कुछ चीज कर रहे हैं हम? ये सेंटेंस देखो, कोई भी बताओ मुझे, व्हाट इज द वर्ब इन दिस सेंटेंस?
एक्शन।
आप रोज ध्यान से देखिए और बताने का कोशिश करिए। सेंटेंस को रीड करेंगे तो आपको समझ में आएगा, ठीक है?
ये काम न दे या एक्शन
हाँ, why?
लेस
The dog
एक्शन।
ran. हाँ, इसमें एक्शन वाला कौन सा वर्ड है? बताओ। एक्शन वाला the dog ran across the Shriman, you try? No? No? Aditya, you can go ahead.
So, I don't know if you're trying to underline this verb or this word, but if you're trying to say across is actually not a verb because it's not an action. Across is a word that just simply says where something is, but it's not an actual action. So let's look at the words one by one again. So this first word, the is actually not an action. It's not describing any action. So it can't be a verb. Dog is not an action, so it's not a verb, but it is a noun. Ran is an action. It's something that the dog was doing. Or yeah, was doing. So ran is an action. So that means it's a verb. So like I explained before, across, while it kind of looks like a verb because you see cross, across is actually not a verb because it's not an action. Across is just a word that says where something is. So across the street means a place or a region. So let's look at this next word, the. Remember, if the is not an action, here or here, it's not an action, so it's not a verb. And street is not an action, it's just a place, so it can't be a verb. So we know this is not an action, this is not an action, this is an action, this is not an action, this is not an action, and this is not an action. So since ran is actually an action, it has to be a verb. So the dog ran across the street. Ran is a word and is a verb that is describing what the dog did to cross the street.
कोई मुझे ran हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं? ट्राई करो वंश या अफरोज. ran हिको या श्रीहान. ran run हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं? भागते. जब हम भागते हैं तो कोई एक्शन करते हैं और एक्शन करते हैं, वो जो वर्ड होता है वो एक्शन वाले वर्ड को बोलते हैं हम वर्ब. तभी ran is the verb. Let's move to the next sentence.
So now let's look at this sentence. She yelled when she hurt her foot. So do what I've been doing these past sentences. You know, look at each word and see whether it's an action or not. And once you do that, it's much easier to say which one is a verb and which one isn't.
So कोई भी try करो. You know, this sentence may be a little tough, Aditya. Maybe we move to a simpler sentence.
Is this
Try
better?
this. Yeah, try this sentence. My teacher help, yes, help me with math. So yeah, so try करो इस sentence में action वाला word कौन सा? Yeah, action वाला word try करो, कोई भी try करो. Anybody जिसके दिमाग में आ रहा है कि इस sentence में action वाला word कौन सा है? My, once you want helps, yes, correct. क्योंकि helps मतलब yes, मदद करना, कुछ करना, हम कोई काम करते हैं, जब किसी की मदद करते हैं, हम काम करते हैं, कोई एक्शन करते हैं, that is why helps is a verb. Yes, Aditya, you want to share the sentence?
Yeah. So helps is the right answer because it's an action. These other words aren't actions, so they can't be verbs. So now sometimes a sentence has more than one verb. So be careful. There can be 2 verbs, they can be 10 verbs. But try to spot all of the verbs in this sentence. I'll read it. She slept on the couch and dreamed all night.
तो आपको हिंट देते हैं, इस सेंटेंस में 2 वर्ड्स हैं. There are 2 words. कोई ट्राई करना चाहता है? 2 words. Can anybody tell me what are the 2 words in this sentence? You want to try? Somebody
Sleep.
wants to?
Sleep.
Yes, correct. Very good. One more word. One, which one, Afroz? Dream. Yes, there are 2 verbs in this sentence. Slept and dreamed. Both are action words. That is why both are verbs. Go ahead, Aditya.
Yeah. So just to say again, there's 2 verbs in this sentence, slept and dreamed. And these are both action words. Slept means sleeping and dreamed means dreaming. And these are both actions that your body does. Sleeping and dreaming is are actions. So they have to be verbs.
Okay. Rakhi, do we still have time left, or I think our time is over?
Oh, I think you're muted, Rocky.
Rakhi, we still have time? Oh, you're muted. You're on mute.
If you want to take 2 minutes more, we can take 2 minutes more. Then after the 2 minutes, we will end the session.
Okay, so let me ask the students today. So, was this class difficult? ये मुश्किल लगा आपको या थोड़ा समझ आया? थोड़ा समझ आया. Shrihan, what about you? थोड़ा समझ आया? Okay. And Afroz, what about you? थोड़ा समझ आया?
Afroz.
थोड़ा. Okay. So, अगर आपको थोड़ा भी आज समझ आया, that's very good. That is excellent. And मुझे I need to see homework. आप लोग कोई homework नहीं देते मुझे वापस. So please give me one sentence with a word. Word. कोई भी sentence लिखिए.
If you give them one sentence, they can't write that sentence. If you give them 5 to 10 sentences, then they have to I have to work. Then they worked.
Okay. Then give me, okay, fine. Give me 5 sentences then.
Yeah.
Give me 5 sentences with verbs. You can make easy sentences. You can make easy sentences, no problem. But I need to see homework. I need to see 5 sentences with verbs, with an action word. Okay? So for next time, please don't forget. Please give me homework. Okay? All right. So
समझ में आया कि मैम ने आपसे 5 सेंटेंस मांगे हैं. अगर आप ग्रुप में नहीं सेंड कर पा रहे हैं तो आप मुझे पर्सनली करेंगे. ठीक है? आप जो मुझे होमवर्क देंगे मैं आपका होमवर्क आगे फॉरवर्ड करूंगी, बट आप लोग मुझे जरूर देंगे. ठीक है? नेक्स्ट सेशन से पहले आपके 5 सेंटेंस सभी के आ जाने चाहिए. अभी जो क्लास में है एटलीस्ट उन बच्चों के तो जरूर. श्रेयन, अफरोज एंड वंश, आपके 5 सेंटेंस हमारे नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे से पहले आ जाने चाहिए. समझ में आ गया सभी को?
सेंटेंस में वर्ड डालना एक्शन वर्ड, चाहे वॉक या स्विम या रन या स्पीक या थिंक या जंप या हॉप, कोई भी एक्शन वर्ड लेके अपने सेंटेंसेस में 5 सेंटेंसेस मुझे देना. ओके? नाउ हम एक और वर्क करते हैं. बाय बाय. ठीक है? बाय करें अपने.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aditya, Rakhi, Vansh, Lekha, Ashleena, and Afroz.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye. Enjoy the weekend. Have a lot of fun on Saturday, Sunday. Have lots and lots of fun. Okay, maza karna. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Rakhi.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you so much. It was such a nice class. Give my compliments to.
Thank you. Bye, Vansh. Bye, Aditya.
थैंक यू मैम. अब आप लोग जो है वो सचेतन ज्वाइन करेंगे. ठीक है? वंस एंड अफरोज, थैंक यू सो मच मैम.
Asha, thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am, my name is Rakhi.
Oh, Rakhi, sorry. Sorry, Rakhi, thank you.
It's okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Okay,
वंश एंड अफरोज, अब आप ज्वाइन करेंगे सचेतन. ठीक है?
ठीक है.